Move, now! My daughter needs this window seat, and I'm not asking twice. People like you should know your place by now. The words sliced through Gate A7 at Denver International Airport like a knife through silence. 25 passengers turned to stare. Phones lifted instantly. A college student hit record on her TikTok live stream. Dr. Amara Johnson looked up from her boarding pass, her Northwestern University hoodie suddenly feeling inadequate against more than just the airport's aggressive air conditioning. At 42, she'd learned to find peace in small moments. This wasn't one of them. The blonde woman in designer athleisure towered over her, gripping her 8-year-old daughter's hand with white knuckles. Her voice carried across the waiting area, ensuring every traveler could witness the confrontation. 25 passengers turned to stare. Phones lifted. A college student hit record on her TikTok live stream. Have you ever been so publicly humiliated that every eye in the room made you question your own right to exist in that space? 18 minutes until boarding begins, announced the gate agent over the intercom. The digital display confirmed Flight 847 to Chicago remained on schedule. Karen Mitchell adjusted her Louis Vuitton purse strap and stepped closer to Amara's seat. Her daughter Madison clutched a stuffed unicorn, wide eyes darting between the adults. "Did you hear me?" Karen's voice pitched higher. "That's my daughter's seat. I paid $89 extra for that window." Amara remained seated, her boarding pass clearly visible in her lap. "Ma'am, I believe there's been a mistake. My pass shows 14A as well." "Your pass?" Karen let out a sharp laugh. "I don't care what discount website you used. I booked this seat 3 weeks ago through my Platinum membership." The college student with the live stream, Zoe Monroe, according to her TikTok handle, adjusted her phone angle. Her viewer count climbed steadily, 847 people watching. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. "This is exactly why I usually fly private," Karen announced, her voice carrying across the gate area. "These discount passengers have no respect for people who actually pay full price." Gate agent Jessica Martinez looked up nervously from her computer terminal. At 23, she'd handled difficult passengers before, but nothing quite like this. The system showed both boarding passes as valid for seat 14AA glitch that happened maybe twice a year. "Mrs. Mitchell, let me check our system again," Jessica offered, fingers flying across her keyboard. "Don't check anything," Karen snapped. "Just remove her. I have every right to that seat, and she knows it." Amara's phone buzzed against her leg. The screen lit up briefly. "Flight ops priority, executive override available," before she silenced it. Her expression remained calm, almost meditative. "Some people think they're entitled to everything without earning it," Karen continued, her voice projecting to the growing audience. "I work hard for my money. My husband's law firm doesn't just hand out charity cases." Madison started to sniffle. Karen immediately scooped her up, staging the moment perfectly for the watching crowd. "Look what you're doing to my baby," she said, bouncing Madison gently. "She has anxiety about flying, and you're making it worse. The window helps her cope." "I understand your daughter's needs," Amara said softly. "Perhaps we can speak with the gate agent together and find a solution." "Don't you ma'am me with that fake politeness," Karen shot back. "I know exactly what this is. You saw a white family with money and decided to take what doesn't belong to you." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably. Others pulled out their own phones to record. Zoe's live stream exploded with engagement. Viewer count hit 1,247. The comments section split between supporters and critics. "Karen is totally right," battled, "This is so racist," in real-time digital warfare. "I don't know what government program got you this ticket," Karen pressed on, "but my tax dollars pay for real seats. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the cargo area with the other packages." The insult landed with surgical precision. Amara's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign the words had found their mark. "Ma'am, please," Jessica intervened, stepping out from behind her desk. "Let me call my supervisor to resolve this seat assignment issue." "Finally," Karen said triumphantly. "Someone with actual authority." She turned back to the gathered crowd, playing to her audience like a seasoned performer. "Can you believe this? I pay premium prices, follow all the rules, and get treated like the problem. This is discrimination against paying customers." An older gentleman in a business suit nodded sympathetically. "You have every right to that seat if you paid for it." A woman with 2 young children whispered to her husband, "Poor little girl. She shouldn't have to deal with this." Amara opened her leather portfolio quietly, checking something inside. Her movements were deliberate, controlled like someone accustomed to making important decisions under pressure. "I want her banned from this airline permanently," Karen declared, pointing at Amara as if she were evidence in a court case. "People need to learn they can't just take what belongs to their betters." The phrase, "their betters," rippled through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. Even Karen's supporters seemed to pause at the choice of words. Zoe whispered into her phone's microphone, barely audible over the chaos. "This is getting really ugly, guys. Almost 1,500 people are watching now." Jessica returned with hurried steps, a slight tremor in her voice. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've called our gate supervisor. He should be here shortly." "Good," Karen said, satisfaction evident in her tone. "Maybe now we'll get this situation handled appropriately." She looked down at Amara one final time. "Some people need to learn that throwing around accusations of racism won't get them free upgrades. This is America. We reward hard work and respect, not attitude." Amara closed her portfolio with a soft click. When she looked up, her eyes held something new, not anger, but a quiet certainty that hadn't been there before. "You're absolutely right about America rewarding hard work," she said evenly. "And respect. We'll see how that plays out." The digital clock above the gate ticked down, 16 minutes until boarding. Marcus Thompson arrived at gate A7 with the weary confidence of a man who'd handled thousands of passenger disputes. At 48, the gate supervisor had seen everything from missed connections to medical emergencies. This looked like another entitled passenger situation requiring firm management. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his eyes immediately settling on Amara as the likely source of trouble. Years of experience had taught him to identify troublemakers quickly. Karen's face lit up with vindication. "Finally, someone with real authority. This woman is refusing to give up my daughter's seat. I paid $89 extra for 14A, and she's claiming it's hers too." "She was here when I arrived," added an elderly passenger, eager to contribute to the narrative. "Just sitting there like she owned the place." Marcus glanced at Jessica, who held up both boarding passes helplessly. "Sir, the system shows both passengers assigned to the same seat. It appears to be a computer error from this morning's server update." "Well, that's simple enough," Marcus said, turning to Amara with practiced authority. "Ma'am, we'll need you to accept a different seat assignment. Mrs. Mitchell clearly has priority here." The assumption hit the crowd like confirmation bias made manifest. Karen hadn't been there first, she'd arrived 20 minutes after Amara, but Marcus's authoritative tone transformed opinion into fact. "I was actually seated first," Amara said calmly, her voice barely above conversation level. "But I'm happy to work with you to resolve this situation properly." "Ma'am, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be," Marcus replied, his patience already wearing thin. "We have a full flight to board in." He checked his watch with theatrical precision. 13 minutes. These passengers need to get home to their families. Security Officer Miguel Rodriguez approached the growing crowd, his radio crackling with routine airport chatter. The gathering of phones and raised voices had caught his attention from across the terminal. 20 years of airport security had fine-tuned his instincts for potential problems. "Is everything under control here?" Rodriguez asked, his hand instinctively resting near his radio. The crowd's energy felt volatile, ready to tip in either direction. "Officer, perfect timing," Karen said, her voice carrying the relief of someone whose cavalry had finally arrived. "This woman is creating a disturbance and refusing to follow basic airline policies. My daughter has special needs, and this person is making her anxiety worse." Rodriguez sized up the situation quickly. Well-dressed white family with visibly upset child, black woman sitting alone in casual clothes, growing crowd of agitated passengers with phones recording. His training manual practically wrote itself. "Ma'am," he said to Amara, "I'm going to need you to cooperate with the airline staff. These situations work better when everyone follows procedures." Zoe's live stream viewer count had exploded to 3,247 people. The comments section moved like digital rapids. "This is so unfair to the kid." Battled, "Something feels wrong here" in real-time warfare. Screenshots spread across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook faster than wildfire. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Karen announced to the crowd, playing to her growing digital audience like a seasoned performer. "Hard-working families get pushed around while people who didn't earn their seats get special treatment from the system." She hoisted Madison higher on her hip, positioning her daughter for maximum visual impact. The 8-year-old had stopped crying but remained wide-eyed at the adult drama surrounding her small world. "Tell the nice lady she needs to move, baby," Karen coached softly, her maternal tone contrasting sharply with her public aggression. "Mommy paid special money for your window seat so you could see the clouds." Madison looked confused, but obediently repeated, "You need to move from my seat, please." The crowd's sympathy crystallized around the child like sugar forming candy. Several passengers nodded approvingly. Someone muttered, "Poor kid shouldn't have to deal with adult problems." Another voice added, "Just give the family their seat." "I don't know what government assistance program got you this ticket," Karen continued, emboldened by the mounting support, "but hard-working taxpayers deserve basic respect. Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the coach where you actually belong." The phrase "actually belong" hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished match. Even some of Karen's supporters seemed to pause at the choice of words. Marcus stepped closer to Amara, lowering his voice to what he imagined was a reasonable, professional tone. "Look, we can move you to an aisle seat in row 27. Same destination, same arrival time, just a different view out the window." "I understand the inconvenience this creates," Amara replied, opening her leather portfolio slightly. Papers inside suggested organization, preparation. "But perhaps we should contact your regional operations center before making permanent seat changes." "Ma'am, I am the operations authority for this gate," Marcus said, his professional veneer cracking slightly under public pressure. "We don't need to involve corporate management in a simple passenger accommodation." Karen sensed total victory approaching like dawn breaking over mountains. "Officer Rodriguez, can you please escort her to the appropriate seat? My daughter's anxiety medication specifically requires window access for visual grounding techniques. It's medically necessary." Rodriguez nodded, reaching for his radio with official purpose. "Control, this is Rodriguez at Gate A7. May need passenger escort assistance for non-compliant seat disputes." The radio crackled back. "Copy that, Rodriguez. Additional units en route if the situation escalates." Amara's phone buzzed insistently against her leg. The screen lit up with multiple notifications that she quickly silenced. "Urgent. Board meeting moved to 8 p.m. EST. Flight Ops, CEO override requested, and Regional Ops awaiting your response." "Ma'am, if you're conducting personal business, perhaps you should take those calls somewhere else," Marcus suggested pointedly. "We need to focus on resolving this immediate seating issue." The crowd pressed closer, forming a loose circle around the drama. More phones appeared like flowers blooming in the digital spring. Someone had started a Facebook live stream titled "Airport Karen Drama Live." Another passenger tweeted, "Insane scene at Denver Airport. Entitled woman won't give up kid's seat. # airport drama. # unbelievable." I want her banned from this airline permanently, Karen declared, pointing at Amara like a prosecutor presenting damning evidence to a jury. This kind of selfish, disruptive behavior affects everyone's travel experience. We all have places to be. A businessman in an expensive suit nodded vigorously. Absolutely right. Absolutely. Some people have no consideration for others. Ma'am, Rodriguez said to Amara, his voice carrying the full weight of official authority, you have exactly two choices here. Accept the seat reassignment voluntarily and we all move on, or we can discuss this situation further in airport security. But this crowd needs to disperse so these people can board their flight on time. Jessica shifted nervously behind the counter, watching the situation spiral far beyond her customer service training. She'd called Marcus to help de-escalate the conflict, not transform the gate area into a public tribunal. Maybe I should contact our customer service supervisor, she suggested weakly, her voice barely audible over the crowd noise. Absolutely not, Marcus said firmly, asserting his authority. This is a simple operational decision. The passenger needs to comply with standard airline policy. We're not calling anyone else. Karen's triumph felt almost complete now. The authority figures had aligned perfectly with her position. The crowd supported her cause. Social media was documenting her righteous victory. Even her daughter was playing her part with innocent perfection. Some people think they can take whatever they want from others, she announced to the assembled passengers like a politician addressing constituents. But this is America. We believe in fairness, respect, and following established rules. Isn't that right, everyone? A murmur of strong agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen had successfully framed herself as the defender of order against chaos, of fairness against entitlement, of rules against anarchy. Amara closed her portfolio with deliberate, controlled care. When she stood, her movement was so fluid and quietly confident that it drew every eye in the gate area like a magnet. For one suspended moment, the chaos paused completely. You're absolutely right about America, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the space with understated power. We do believe in fairness and following rules, all of them, every single one. She walked toward the gate desk with the kind of unhurried, purposeful stride that suggested she wasn't retreating, she was advancing toward something inevitable. Jessica, she said calmly, her tone shifting subtly into something that commanded attention. Could you please contact your regional operations manager immediately? I think we need to review some very important policies. The countdown clock showed 11 minutes until boarding, but something in Amara's tone suggested the real departure was still ahead. Final boarding call for Flight 847 to Chicago, announced the gate agent over the intercom. All passengers should now be prepared for immediate boarding. The countdown clock showed exactly 10 minutes. The crowd pressed closer, phones held high like digital torches in the gathering storm of confrontation. The energy was electric, predatory, everyone sensing they were about to witness someone's complete humiliation. Instead of backing down or accepting defeat, Amara walked deliberately toward Jessica's gate desk. Her movement carried a quiet confidence that seemed oddly out of place for someone supposedly cornered by multiple authority figures and an angry mob. Ma'am, where do you think you're going? Marcus called after her, irritation bleeding through his professional facade like ink through paper. We're not finished here. You need to comply with the seat reassignment. Several passengers murmured agreement. Someone called out, "Just take the other seat." Another voice added, "Stop being difficult." Amara reached into her leather portfolio and withdrew a slim folder. From it, she pulled out 3 items: a business card, an official identification badge, and what appeared to be a corporate access key card. She placed all 3 on the counter where Jessica could see them clearly. Jessica's eyes widened as she read the business card. Her face went from confusion to recognition to absolute horror in the span of 3 seconds. The blood drained from her cheeks so quickly that she gripped the counter for support. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the crowd noise. "Ms. Johnson, We had no idea. This can't be happening. What's going on? Marcus demanded, stepping closer to the desk with aggressive authority. What is she showing you? Don't let her distract you from the issue here. Jessica held up the business card with trembling fingers. Her voice cracked as she read aloud, each word falling like a bomb. Dr. Amara Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, SkyWest Regional Airlines. The words hit the crowd like a sonic boom. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones froze in hands. The aggressive energy that had been building toward Amara's humiliation suddenly reversed direction like a tide pulling back before a tsunami. That's impossible, Karen sputtered, her voice suddenly small and uncertain. The confident righteousness that had carried her through the confrontation began cracking like ice under pressure. You're lying. She's lying. That can't be real. CEOs don't fly coaches. But even as she spoke, Karen was frantically Googling on her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen with desperate urgency. SkyWest CEO. The search results loaded instantly. The first image showed Dr. Amara Johnson at a corporate podium, wearing a business suit and the same calm, intelligent expression she'd maintained throughout the entire confrontation. Holy shit, breathed someone in the crowd. She's actually the CEO, the actual CEO of the airline. No way, another passenger whispered. This can't be real. Zoe's live stream exploded like a digital firework. Her viewer count rocketed past 8,000 as she whispered urgently into her phone. Guys, this woman is literally the CEO of the airline. Karen just spent 20 minutes attacking the CEO of the entire company. This is insane. Comments flooded the screen faster than human eyes could track them. No fucking way. Karen is so dead. This is the best plot twist ever. Screenshot everything. She's about to get destroyed. Marcus grabbed the business card from Jessica's hands, studying it like he was examining evidence of alien life. The SkyWest logo was embossed in gold, the paper stock was expensive, and the contact information included a direct line to the corporate headquarters in Utah. Ms. Johnson, Marcus stammered, his authoritative demeanor evaporating like morning mist in sudden sunlight. We didn't realize. Why didn't you identify yourself immediately? This could have been avoided. Amara's response was measured, professional, and devastating in its quiet simplicity. I shouldn't have to announce my position to receive basic human dignity. Every passenger who flies with us deserves the same respect, regardless of their title, economic status, or appearance. The implication hung in the air like smoke. She had been testing them, testing their systems, their employees, their fundamental humanity, and they had failed spectacularly. Rodriguez stepped backward involuntarily, his hand moving away from his radio as if it had suddenly become radioactive. 20 years of security experience had never prepared him for accidentally threatening to arrest a major airline CEO. His career was flashing before his eyes. Ma'am, Ms. Johnson, I sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding, he said, sweat beginning to form on his forehead, despite the airport's aggressive air conditioning. I was following standard protocols for passenger disputes. Standard protocols, Amara repeated thoughtfully. That's exactly what we need to examine. Karen stood frozen, Madison still balanced on her hip, staring at Amara as if seeing her for the first time. The confident, righteous anger that had carried her through the confrontation drained from her face like color bleeding from fabric in bleach. But you're wearing a hoodie, she said weakly, as if casual clothing somehow invalidated corporate leadership. You don't look like a CEO. CEOs wear suits. They fly first class. They don't sit in regular seats. What exactly does a CEO look like? Amara asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge, forcing everyone within earshot to confront their own assumptions and unconscious prejudices. Karen's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. She had no answer that wouldn't expose the racial and class bias underlying her assumptions. Jessica found her voice, though it trembled with the weight of potential career consequences. Ms. Johnson, I'm so sorry about this entire situation. The system glitch this morning affected several flights. I should have handled this differently. I should have called management immediately. Jessica, you followed your training exactly as designed, Amara said, her tone surprisingly gentle. The failure wasn't yours. It was systemic. That's why I conduct these evaluations. She turned to address the broader crowd, her voice carrying clearly across the gate area with the kind of natural authority that comes from years of leadership. I was conducting an unscheduled audit of our customer service protocols. These evaluations help us understand how our employees and our policies treat passengers when they believe no one important is watching. The implications of her words settled over the crowd like falling snow. Every interaction, every assumption, every moment of bias had been witnessed and evaluated by the person with ultimate authority over the airline's operations. This is a setup, Karen said desperately, grasping for any explanation that didn't involve her complete and total humiliation. You planned this whole thing. This is entrapment. It's not fair. I planned to fly home quietly after a leadership conference in Denver, Amara replied calmly. I didn't plan for you to provide such a comprehensive demonstration of the exact problems we need to address in our industry. Zoe's live stream had become a digital amphitheater. Viewers were sharing the stream across every social media platform imaginable. CEO Revenge began trending nationally within minutes. The video was being downloaded, reshared, and discussed in real time across millions of screens worldwide. Marcus attempted damage control, his career flashing before his eyes like a drowning man's life. Ms. Johnson, I was simply following standard protocols for passenger seat disputes. I had no way of knowing your position. Surely you understand that we have procedures. Marcus, Amara interrupted gently, you assumed I was the problem before investigating any facts. You supported Mrs. Mitchell's position based on what criteria exactly? The question was devastating because everyone knew the answer. Marcus had made his judgment based on appearance, assumptions, and unconscious bias. In front of dozens of witnesses and thousands of digital viewers, there was no plausible explanation that didn't involve acknowledging his prejudice. The passenger complaint seemed legitimate, he said weakly, sweat beading on his upper lip. Which passenger complaint? Amara asked with surgical precision. Mrs. Mitchell's demand that I move or my request to resolve the seating error through proper channels? Marcus had no answer. The question exposed the fundamental flaw in his decision-making process. Karen's phone buzzed with an urgent text from her husband. David here, just saw the video online. Call me immediately, this is very bad, don't say anything else. Her face went white as she realized the full scope of her situation. The live stream had reached her personal and professional networks. Screenshots were probably already circulating in Denver's legal community. Her husband's law firm, Peterson, Mitchell & Associates, had significant business relationships throughout the city's corporate ecosystem. Please, Karen said, her voice cracking with desperation. I didn't know who you were. I was just trying to protect my daughter's seat. Can't we just forget this whole thing happened? I'll apologize publicly. Mrs. Mitchell, Amara said, her tone remaining professionally neutral but somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. Forgetting would be a disservice to every passenger who faces discrimination without having my resources to address it. This interaction revealed important truths about how our systems work and fail. She turned to Jessica, Please upgrade Mrs. Mitchell and her daughter to first class for this flight. Madison shouldn't suffer for today's events, and she'll be more comfortable away from the crowd. But ma'am, Jessica protested, after what happened? A child isn't responsible for adult failures, Amara said firmly. Madison should enjoy her flight and remember that people can choose to be better than their worst moments. The gesture of unexpected grace toward someone who had publicly humiliated her sent ripples through the crowd. Karen's eyes filled with tears, not of anger now, but of genuine shame and confusion. However, Amara continued, her voice taking on a different quality, the unmistakable tone of executive authority. We do need to discuss the broader implications of today's events. She opened her tablet and accessed what was clearly a corporate dashboard filled with real-time data, performance metrics, and operational controls that no ordinary passenger would possess. SkyWest Regional operates 2,347 flights daily across 43 states. We serve 43.7 million passengers annually with gross revenues of $2.3 billion. Our employee handbook specifically prohibits discrimination, and our customer service standards require equal treatment regardless of passenger appearance or perceived economic status. The numbers weren't just impressive, they were weapons. Each statistic reinforced the magnitude of power that Karen had unknowingly challenged. "Mrs. Mitchell," Amara said, consulting her tablet with deliberate precision, "I see that your husband's firm, Peterson, Mitchell and Associates, handles approximately $4.7 million in annual legal billing for our insurance and liability matters." Karen's face went ashen. The connection between her public behavior and her family's professional livelihood suddenly became crystal clear. "I also notice," Amara continued with devastating precision, "that you've been a SkyWest frequent flyer for 6 years, with significant corporate booking relationships through your husband's firm." She looked up from the tablet, meeting Karen's eyes directly. "So now we need to determine how to proceed, because this interaction will become part of our corporate training materials, and your behavior today violated multiple sections of our customer conduct agreements." The countdown clock showed 8 minutes until boarding, but for Karen, time had stopped entirely. What does that mean?" Karen whispered. Amara's expression remained neutral, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its calm certainty. "It means," she said quietly, "that we're going to have a very important conversation about accountability, consequences, and how people choose to treat each other when they think no one is watching." The gate area had become completely silent except for the distant hum of airport operations and the quiet buzz of phones recording what would become one of the most viral airport incidents in social media history. Amara's tablet screen illuminated her face as she accessed deeper levels of corporate data. The interface displayed real-time operational metrics that only someone with ultimate executive authority could view. Every tap of her finger revealed another layer of power that Karen had unwittingly challenged. "Let me share some context about the scope of today's situation," Amara said, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to addressing boardrooms full of powerful executives. "SkyWest Regional doesn't just operate flights. We're the backbone of American regional aviation." She turned the tablet screen toward the crowd, displaying a live operational dashboard. "Right now, at this moment, we have 847 aircraft in the air carrying 127,000 passengers. We employ 23,000 people across North America. Our on-time performance affects connecting flights for American, United, Delta, and Alaska Airlines." The numbers weren't just statistics, they were a demonstration of reach, influence, and consequences that rippled far beyond this single gate. "Mrs. Mitchell," Amara continued, pulling up another screen, "your behavior today was witnessed by 12,000 live viewers and recorded on multiple devices. That footage is now permanent digital evidence that will be preserved in our corporate legal files under Federal Aviation Regulation 9.1.11. which governs passenger conduct and airline security protocols." Karen's phone buzzed again. Another text from her husband. "Karen, stop talking. Say nothing else. Video is everywhere. Our insurance contracts are with SkyWest." Her hands shook as she read the message. The full scope of her professional and personal destruction was beginning to crystallize. "I need to call my husband," Karen said weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," Amara replied with professional courtesy. "David Peterson and I have met several times at legal conferences. He's an excellent attorney. I'm sure he'll provide sound counsel about the intersection of personal conduct and professional relationships. The casual mention of her husband's first name sent another wave of shock through Karen. It wasn't just that Amara knew about the law firm, she had personal relationships within Denver's legal community. Marcus stepped forward, desperation evident in his voice. Ms. Johnson, with respect, this was an unfortunate misunderstanding. Perhaps we could resolve this through internal channels without involving corporate policies. Marcus, Amara said, consulting her tablet again, you've been a gate supervisor for 7 years. During that time, how many passenger disputes have you resolved in favor of the person who appeared to have less economic status? The question hung in the air like a sword. Marcus knew that any honest answer would reveal a pattern of bias that extended far beyond today's incident. I don't keep track of those statistics, he said lamely. We do, Amara replied, accessing another dashboard. Every passenger interaction is logged in our customer service database. Complaint resolutions, upgrade decisions, seat reassignments, all tracked by employee, demographic data, and outcome patterns. She turned the screen toward Marcus. Your resolution patterns show a 73% bias toward passengers perceived as higher socioeconomic status. Today's interaction fits a documented pattern of discriminatory decision-making. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably, realizing that his own intervention patterns were likely equally documented and biased. Officer Rodriguez, Amara said, anticipating his concerns, airport security interactions are jointly tracked by TSA and airline security databases. Your threat to escort me for non-compliance will be reviewed by your supervisors and ours. The web of accountability was tightening around everyone who had participated in the discrimination. Zoe's live stream had reached 15,000 viewers. The comments section had become a real-time case study in corporate power dynamics. She's systematically destroying everyone. This is like watching a masterclass in executive authority. Karen picked the wrong person to mess with. Let's discuss the specific violations, Amara continued, pulling up what appeared to be SkyWest's customer conduct policy. Section 14.7 prohibits harassment, intimidation, or discriminatory behavior toward other passengers. Mrs. Mitchell, your statements about people like you and suggestions about cargo areas constitute clear violations. Karen's face crumpled. I didn't mean... Those weren't meant to be racist. I was just frustrated about the seat. Intent and impact are both relevant in corporate policy enforcement, Amara replied. Your frustration doesn't negate the discriminatory language or its effect on other passengers and our staff. She pulled up another screen. Section 12.3 addresses disruption of airline operations. Your demand for my removal, involvement of security, and creation of a crowd disturbance affected boarding procedures for 142 passengers. What are the consequences? Karen asked, her voice barely audible. Standard enforcement includes temporary or permanent travel restrictions across our network, Amara said, reading from the policy document. Given SkyWest's code share agreements, this affects approximately 78% of domestic U.S. flights. The scope of potential travel restrictions hit Karen like a physical blow. Her husband's law practice required frequent travel across multiple states. An airline ban would be professionally devastating. However, Amara continued, I believe in education over punishment when possible. Mrs. Mitchell, you have a choice. She turned the tablet screen toward Karen, displaying 2 options. Option A, standard policy enforcement results in an 18-month travel restriction and formal incident report to TSA. Option B, participate in our new Dignity in Travel education program, complete 40 hours of bias training, and serve as a case study advocate for respectful passenger behavior. Karen stared at the screen, realizing she was being offered a path to redemption rather than destruction. The education program includes speaking at corporate training sessions, participating in customer service videos, and publicly advocating for the respectful treatment of all passengers regardless of appearance or perceived status. Amara explained. You want me to become a spokesperson for not being racist? Karen asked, confused by the unexpected offer. I want you to become a spokesperson for treating people with dignity, Amara corrected. Your experience today, both the failure and the learning, could help thousands of travelers and airline employees develop better patterns of interaction. Jessica watched the exchange with growing amazement. She had expected punishment, firing, and corporate vindictiveness. Instead, she was witnessing leadership that transformed crisis into education. For our employees, Amara said, addressing Marcus and the gate staff, today's interaction will become mandatory training material. Marcus, you'll be reassigned to customer service education while completing bias recognition training. Your performance review will depend on measurable improvement in equitable passenger treatment. Marcus nodded, relief evident on his face. Reassignment was better than termination. Jessica, you handled an impossible situation with professionalism. You'll receive additional training in conflict de-escalation, but your job performance today wasn't a systemic failure. The live stream audience watched in fascination as corporate accountability unfolded in real time. This wasn't just punishment, it was systematic reform happening before their eyes. Mrs. Mitchell, Amara said, returning focus to Karen, your daughter Madison is watching how adults handle mistakes and accountability. What example do you want to set for her? Karen looked down at Madison, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange. Her daughter's wide eyes held confusion, but also the beginning of understanding about how people should treat each other. I choose the education program, Karen said, her voice stronger than it had been in 20 minutes. I want to do better. I want Madison to see that people can learn and change. Excellent, Amara said, making notes on her tablet. You'll receive program details within 48 hours. The first session begins next week and includes other participants who've recognized the need to examine their own biases. She looked around the gate area, addressing the crowd that had gathered to witness someone's humiliation and instead seen corporate leadership model accountability and education. For everyone else who witnessed today's events, Amara said, her voice carrying clearly across the space, I hope you'll remember that every passenger deserves dignity regardless of appearance, accent, or perceived economic status. Airlines are public accommodations. We serve everyone. The countdown clock showed 5 minutes until boarding, but the most important departure had already occurred, the transformation of conflict into education, of punishment into opportunity, of corporate power into systemic change. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica announced over the intercom, her voice steadier now, we'll begin boarding Flight 847 momentarily. Thank you for your patience during this important conversation. Amara closed her tablet and looked directly into Zoe's still streaming camera. Change happens one interaction at a time, she said quietly. Today we chose education over punishment, growth over vindictiveness. That's how we build better systems. The gate area buzzed with quiet conversations as passengers processed what they had witnessed. It wasn't the public destruction they had expected. It was something more powerful. It was justice that created possibility, rather than just consequences. Karen clutched Madison closer, understanding that her daughter had just witnessed what accountability and redemption could look like when guided by principled leadership rather than vindictive power. 3 months later, the transformation was undeniable. Karen Mitchell stood before a conference room of 200 SkyWest employees at the Denver Training Center, her voice steady as she addressed the audience. Madison sat in the front row, coloring in an aviation-themed workbook that had become her favorite activity since meeting Dr. Amara. I want to show you exactly what unconscious bias looks like, Karen said, clicking a slide showing her own face from that viral airport video. This is me, 3 months ago, making assumptions about a fellow passenger based on her appearance, her race, and my own sense of entitlement. The room watched in silence as she played a carefully edited portion of the live stream footage. Her voice, from the video demanding, dismissive, cruel, contrasted sharply with the humble, educated woman speaking now. I convinced myself I was protecting my daughter, Karen continued. In reality, I was teaching her that some people matter more than others based on skin color and perceived status. I was wrong, completely, inexcusably wrong. In the back of the room, Amara observed quietly. These sessions had exceeded her expectations. Karen had become one of their most effective training facilitators, precisely because her transformation felt authentic rather than performative. The Dignity in Travel program had launched across all SkyWest operations within 6 weeks of the Denver incident. The metrics were compelling. Passenger complaints involving discriminatory treatment had dropped 34% system-wide. Employee satisfaction scores had increased 12%. Most importantly, the customer service equity gap had narrowed significantly. Marcus Thompson raised his hand from the audience. His reassignment to customer service education had initially felt like punishment, but it had become the most meaningful work of his career. Karen, how do you handle the online criticism? He asked. People still share that video and make negative comments about you. The criticism reminds me that actions have consequences, Karen replied honestly. But the positive feedback from families who've had better travel experiences because of these changes makes it worthwhile. My embarrassment matters less than systematic improvement. Madison looked up from her coloring book and smiled at her mother. The 8-year-old had become fascinated with aviation after receiving her junior pilot wings from Dr. Amara. She talked constantly about becoming a pilot herself someday. Jessica Martinez, now promoted to gate supervisor after completing advanced conflict resolution training, stood to address the group. The policy changes have made our jobs easier, not harder. When employees know that dignity and respect are measured performance criteria, we make better decisions instinctively. The new protocols were comprehensive. Every customer service interaction was evaluated for equity. Bias recognition training was mandatory for all customer-facing employees. Anonymous reporting systems allowed passengers to flag discriminatory treatment without fear of retaliation. Most importantly, Amara said, speaking for the first time during the session, we've proven that corporations can choose growth over defensiveness when confronted with systemic problems. She displayed a slide showing industry-wide adoption statistics. 47 other airlines have implemented similar dignity policies based on our model. The International Air Transport Association has created new inclusion standards. 3 countries have updated their aviation customer service regulations. The ripple effects extended far beyond aviation. Harvard Business School had developed a case study on crisis leadership. The Congressional Subcommittee on Transportation had invited Amara to testify about discrimination in travel. Federal guidelines were being updated based on SkyWest's approach. Karen, Amara said, you've spoken to over 3,000 employees across multiple companies. What's been the most surprising response? How many people have similar stories? Karen replied thoughtfully. Not as dramatic as mine, but moments when they realized they had made assumptions or treated someone poorly based on bias. These training sessions become confession and healing spaces. Zoe Monroe, the college student whose live stream had captured the original incident, had parlayed her viral video into a documentary series about social justice and corporate accountability. She was completing her senior thesis on how social media could drive systemic change rather than just public shaming. The documentary, Real-Life Stories When Power Meets Accountability, had been purchased by Netflix and featured the Denver incident as a case study in transformative leadership. The series explored how touching stories of individual growth could create broader institutional change. Dr. Johnson, asked an employee from the audience, how do you measure success for this program? 3 metrics, Amara replied. First, passenger experience equity ensuring all travelers receive comparable service regardless of demographics. Second, employee development measuring whether staff grow in cultural competency and bias recognition. Third, industry influence tracking how many other organizations adopt similar policies. She clicked on a final slide showing program statistics. After 12 weeks, we've achieved an 89% approval rating from participants, 23% improvement in cross-cultural customer service scores, and adoption by 31% of major U.S. airlines. The session concluded with Madison presenting her completed coloring book to the group. Her carefully colored aircraft bore the words, "Everyone flies together," in bright purple crayon. As participants filed out, Karen approached Amara with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Dr. Johnson, I want to expand the program beyond aviation. Hotels, restaurants, retail, everywhere people make assumptions about customers based on appearance." "That's an excellent idea," Amara replied. "But remember, sustainable change happens incrementally. We've proven the model works in aviation. Now we can demonstrate its effectiveness across industries." 3 months ago, Gate A7 had been the site of humiliation and bias. Today, it represented the possibility that individual accountability could drive institutional transformation. The real victory wasn't Karen's personal redemption or even SkyWest's policy changes. It was the proof that organizations could choose education over defensiveness, growth over punishment, and systematic improvement over simply managing crisis. Black stories like Amara's were becoming catalysts for change rather than just documentation of discrimination. These real-life stories were transforming entire industries, one dignified interaction at a time. 1 year later, Dr. Amara Johnson received an unexpected letter addressed to her corporate office. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, the script of someone who had taken time to choose each word thoughtfully. "Dear Dr. Johnson," it began, "my name is Madison Mitchell. I am 9 years old now. My mom says I should write to thank you for teaching us about being kind to everyone." The letter continued in Madison's earnest voice. "I am learning to fly planes in a simulator at the Science Museum. Mom says you inspired me to dream bigger. I want to be like you someday, powerful but kind." Attached was a photograph of Madison wearing pilot wings and sitting in a flight simulator, her face bright with determination and joy. On the back, Karen had written, "She talks about becoming the first pilot in our family. Thank you for showing her what leadership looks like." Time magazine had named Amara Executive of the Year, but this letter represented the victory that mattered most. A child whose worldview had been shaped by witnessing accountability and redemption rather than punishment and shame. The Denver incident had become a landmark case study taught in business schools, featured in leadership conferences, and referenced in corporate ethics courses worldwide. But its greatest impact remained personal, the thousands of individual interactions that had improved because people chose dignity over bias. Zoe Monroe's documentary series had won a Student Emmy Award and launched her career in social justice journalism. Her follow-up interviews with all the participants showed the long-term effects of choosing education over destruction. Karen had become a national speaker on unconscious bias, working with corporations across multiple industries. Her husband's law firm had expanded their civil rights practice, specializing in systemic discrimination cases. Their marriage had grown stronger through the process of examining and changing their own biases. Marcus Thompson had been promoted to Regional Customer Service Director, developing bias recognition training programs that were now industry standard. Rodriguez had completed a master's degree in conflict resolution and become an expert in de-escalation techniques. The ripple effects continued expanding. 3 universities had created scholarships for underrepresented students in aviation management. The Federal Aviation Administration had updated diversity and inclusion requirements for all commercial airlines. International aviation organizations had adopted dignity in travel as core operational principles. But perhaps the most powerful change was invisible. The countless daily interactions where people paused before making assumptions, chose kindness over convenience, and recognized the humanity in fellow travelers who looked different from themselves. These touching stories of transformation proved that individual moments of courage could reshape entire systems. Real-life stories like Amara's demonstrated that power exercised with wisdom created lasting change rather than temporary victory. The Black stories that had once documented only discrimination were now showcasing leadership, resilience, and the possibility of institutional transformation driven by principled action rather than reactive anger. At Gate A7 in Denver International Airport, a small plaque now marked the spot where the incident occurred. It read simply, "Dignity in travel begins with how we treat each other when we think no one important is watching." Your voice matters in creating change. Have you witnessed moments when someone's dignity was challenged? How did you respond? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire the next transformation. When we choose education over humiliation, growth over punishment, we create the possibility for real change. Your experience could be the catalyst someone else needs to act with courage and compassion. Subscribe to Black Tales Stories for more inspiring accounts of how individual courage transforms entire systems. Hit the notification bell to join our community of changemakers who believe that respect and accountability can revolutionize how we treat each other. Share this story with someone who needs to see that power exercised with wisdom creates lasting positive change. Together, we can make dignity in travel and in life the standard rather than the exception.